Imagine the following scenario. You are going through the most recent updates on cryptocurrencies and simply relaxing when suddenly the entire XRP community explodes with a rumor that is so massive, so unexpected, and so thrilling that it instantly becomes the most discussed subject on Reddit, Twitter, Telegram, and YouTube. What are your thoughts on the potential that this unanticipated surge is centered around what many people believe to be the most important institutional moment in the history of XRP? Consider the scenario in which I were to tell you that there is a document that is believed to have been written early on and is currently making its way through the back channels. It is the kind of documentation that major asset managers quietly prepare a great deal of time in advance of making announcements to the general public. Furthermore, there is an association between this document and BlackRock, as well as a potential product that is associated with XRP. Now, let's consider the following scenario. What if I were to inform you that there is a number that continues to refuse to die, in addition to the murmurs that I have already mentioned? The objective of 2,250 rise, which has been discussed for months among analysts, influencers, and community researchers, and has come to be recognized as a symbol in the industry. On this day, we are going to delve into the rumors, the leaks, the patterns, the movement of institutions, the activity of whales, the hype cycles, the theories of liquidity, and the enormous quantity of supposition that is feeding the notion that XRP is at the precipice of a moment that is completely unprecedented. After then, there was an incident that took place, which only served to exacerbate the already dire circumstances. A massive whale that is in the process of being moved to a different location. A transaction with a value of about $92.7 million worth of XRP was registered on the blockchain as a single transaction. The migration of whales over a distance of tens of millions of miles is scarcely a common occurrence. Large transfers are often the harbinger of other events, such as stages of accumulation, institutional repositioning, reorganization of internal wallets, or strategic reallocation. The members of the neighborhood found the moment to be an unsettling one. Given that the rumors concerning the ETF were the primary concern of the general public at the time this enormous transfer occurred, what might be the explanation for this coincidence? Was it a coincidence that this occurred? Was it a whale preparing itself for potential shifts in the market? Or was it a strategy that was more comprehensive and had a greater emphasis on the institution itself? The truth has not yet been found. Because there is always speculation in the cryptocurrency markets regarding the actions of whales, the timing of the incident was excellent for the formation of the perfect narrative storm. As a consequence of the unmistakable activity that was occurring on the blockchain, the center of gravity for the exchange-traded fund ETF discourse experienced a drastic shift. The plot increased in both breadth and scope in direct proportion to the amount of dialogue that was taking place. The ongoing discussion around XRP and the time frame for the exchange-traded fund ETF for Bitcoin have been connected to one another by critics. They recalled the way in which the news sources dismissed the initial Bitcoin ETF uploads as being the result of errors and inadvertent filings, only for the final ETF to be disclosed just a short while later. Some people have observed that it is not uncommon for companies to secure for themselves an advantageous situation well in advance of any public statements. Ripple's unwavering commitment to establishing ties with institutions, carrying out tests of central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, and updating global payment and infrastructure systems is regarded as evidence that XRP is more likely than ever before to be in the spotlight of institutional investors. Even the doubters had to admit that the timing of all the activity, rumors, leaks, and whale movement was, at the very least, interesting. At the same time, the story that surrounded the liquidity of $20 trillion reappeared. This time, it was more than just an abstract idea or notion. It was integrated into a more extensive narrative that provides evidence of the fact that XRP has been pushed as a high-speed liquidity solution for a global financial system that is worth hundreds of trillions of dollars on a constant basis. The concept that an exchange-traded fund, ETF, possesses the capability to free up institutional capital gave rise to a sense of congruence between the theories of liquidity and modern financial products. People began to get an idea of what it would be like to live in a world in which the use of exchange exchange-traded funds, ETFs, for institutional settlements, tokenization platforms, and centralized liquidity providers all come together to revolve around one single high-speed asset. The speculation that was circulating around the ETF contributed significantly to the huge momentum that the idea had acquired. As a consequence of the analyst's decision to meticulously study each perspective, comments, conjectures, disagreements, conversations that took place on live streams, and community breakdowns all inundated the situation in the course of the next few hours. They looked into the potential appearance of an XRP exchange-traded fund, its possible structure, the functions that liquidity pools would perform, the way that demand from institutional investors might develop, the way that the distribution of supply could have an impact on pricing mechanisms, and even the way that the most recent leaks could be an indication of the readiness of the organization. Meanwhile, there was a tremendous lot of enthusiasm generated by the notion that institutions were even considering an XRP exchange-traded fund, ETF. This is the result of the possibility that a development of this nature could serve as an indication of a shift in the manner in which XRP is perceived within the framework of traditional finance. It has the potential to begin to be considered a member of the category of investable institutional products, placing it in the same category as Bitcoin, Ethereum, and other assets that are approved for exchange-traded funds, ETFs. This is in contrast to being considered exclusively as a digital asset with a specific use case. The enthusiasm and attention that were produced on social media platforms were significant as a result of that shift in perspective, regardless of whether that view was grounded in reality or supposition. XRP was no longer being viewed as a stalling asset. Instead, it was being promoted as a sleeping behemoth that was approaching an institutional awakening. While people were theorizing about the situation, individuals from the community who were engaged in research began to investigate the potential consequences that goods of an institutional grade could have on the degree of liquidity, the compression of settlement volume, and the discovery of prices over the long run. The exchange-traded fund, ETF, could potentially create a feedback loop, according to their hypothesis. The following are the steps that would be included in this feedback loop: an increase in demand, an increase in visibility, an increase in adoption, an increase in liquidity, and an increase in the overall strength of the argument for institutional integration. The combination of this loop with the symbolic $2,150 objective gave rise to the development of the most successful and highly engaging narrative that could possibly be created. People began to think about the potential psychological effects that could result from a major financial institution acknowledging XRP. They had an idea of what it might look like if regular market players, institutional investors, pension funds, hedge funds, and sovereign wealth funds all had quick access to a product that used XRP. Even though the story was solely based on supposition, it generated an infinite number of discussions. For the duration of the conversation, the subject centered around the behavior of the whales. Analysts who probed a wide range of ideas evaluated the origins and end destinations of the transfer. These theories varied and included the reorganization of cold wallets, over-the-counter internal swaps, and strategies for long-term accumulation, among other things. The unknowns only helped to aggravate the speculation, as each interpretation carried with it its own set of repercussions. The idea that it was likely that more experienced players had already begun to prepare for an event that the broader public had not yet been made aware of began to dawn on people. Even the commentators who had doubts about the rumors surrounding the exchange-traded fund, ETF, admitted that whale movements sometimes come before significant market moves. If there are no announcements, then there will be internal reallocations that take place before volatility begins. These reallocations will be preceded by movements of the whales. With each passing hour, the story began to grow more longer. The chatter was the subject of more reports from influencers. More videos surfaced that were founded on conjecture. The members of the community engaged in a greater amount of discussion concerning the legitimacy of the documents that had been disclosed to the public. Were these statements factual, or were they unintentionally produced or disseminated? There were those individuals who outright rejected the entire idea. According to the people who were completely convinced of this marked the beginning of the institutional era for XRP. The excitement, enthusiasm, and anticipation surrounding the event, along with the uncertainty that accompanied it and the excitement that it caused, produced a perfect storm of engagement. In the realm of cryptocurrency, XRP has once more assumed the position of being the most significant participant. As we have reached this point in our extensive investigation, it is imperative that we take a step back in order to reflect on the development of the tale that is unfolding before us. There are several factors that are working in your favor, including the many decades of financial innovation that has taken place